Hello and welcome back to 4-Player LAN Party. I'm Patrick. No Hawaiian shirt today because we're all business. Today we're going to be doing another controller review. We're going to be reviewing the Nintendo Switch PowerA Pro Controller. Got a couple of things to say about this thing. But before we jump into that, remember to like, subscribe, and comment your thoughts on this controller or whatever controller you want to see us do next. We might read them. We're probably going to poke fun at it. But hey, that's all part of the experience. And don't forget to ring the bell, body slam, subscribe. It's YouTube, just figure it out. All right, so jumping right into it, I'm gonna start off with the pros of this controller because it's a pro controller, obviously. So right off the bat, feels amazing. In terms of all the Nintendo Switch Pro controllers I've held in my hands, easily the smoothest experience I've had. And you can kind of see it. It does have grips on the back of it to make it feel a little better despite the removable faceplate. The smoothest experience I've ever had. Feels great in your hand. It doesn't feel too big. It doesn't feel too small. It fits my hand very comfortably. Another thing that I really like about it is the buttons. The faceplate buttons on them are very big, and I like the big buttons because I'm always fat thumbing every single controller button in the height of everything. I'm hitting 6 buttons at once because I'm really sweaty into Smash, and I'm just tapping everything. They're very spaced out. They're very big. They're not too clicky, but they're clicky enough that you can feel individually which button you're pressing, and they don't all feel homogeneous. So I very much like that and appreciate that. The back pedal buttons, very sensitive. This is both a pro and a con. The back pedals are very sensitive, which is good if you need them to be. Horrible if you need to tap them a lot, basically. It also looks sexy. This is one fine looking controller. Whether you have the black or the white faceplate on it, they are very clean looking. Ultimately, this controller is a status symbol, and the look plays the part of it. This is like the controller that walks in fully suited up, right? He doesn't have anything fancy going on. He doesn't have like a fancy tie. He doesn't have a fancy ascot on. He doesn't got jewelry. He is all business, but he's here to slay. Another good thing that I like about this controller, the charging wire is very long. It is very long. This is a wireless controller, but you can also plug it in to play it wired, and we love the long wires. We don't want to be 8 inches away from our Switch, basically trying to play this thing. So big fan of the long wires because I can play from my bed because I'm lazy. So Vaughn actually reviewed the Xbox PowerA Pro controller, and his biggest gripe with it is that it wasn't wireless. It had to be wired, which means that controller basically essentially lives or breathes by the wire. This one solves that problem by giving you the best of both worlds. You can have it wired, but it's also wireless, so you can take it with you and you don't have to worry about the wire getting in the way of anything. Multiple stick options, which, you know, standard affair with most of these Pro controllers these days. But for the Nintendo Switch, you usually don't have a lot of customizable ones like you'd see on the Xbox and the PlayStation. So you do have multiple stick options to choose from, which are nice. I didn't stick with them. I used them for testing purposes, but I ultimately ended up taking them off because I'm just mapped muscle memory basically to them. It was also very responsive. I like the way that the home button, the plus and minus, and the amiibo button and the screenshot here, I like how they're all separated. So again, I'm not fat thumbing everything on there. I like that they're spaced away. Unfortunately, that's about it for the pros. And now we're gonna get to my favorite section, the cons for this. So right off the bat, the elephant that has to be addressed is this is a Nintendo Switch product. And the price point on this is easily probably one of the most expensive Pro controllers you're gonna be buying for the Nintendo Switch. You're looking at like $100 entry point for this thing. Now, what you are getting for that $100 in the grand scheme of gaming is actually a pretty good deal. This is a PowerA name brand wireless controller that has mappable buttons on it, different stick options. Yeah, you're getting the whole 9 yards. You get a case. You get a carrying case on this bad boy, which is more than can be said for some Pro controllers. So in the grand scheme of things, the price point's not terrible. Typically, we see anywhere between 100 to 150 for these things. However, that being said, again, this is a Nintendo Switch product. Chances are this is going to kids or collectors. And especially for the younger crowd, this is kind of a big ask for mom and dad. The other big setback on this is that there is no motion controls. So right off the bat, half the games that require that, you ain't playing Wii Sports with this. It's not Wii Sports anymore, is it? You're not playing Switch Sports with this, right? So this controller does have a niche, and that is for pro MLG style games. None of this kiddie motion control stuff, which is kind of a bummer because you spend $100 and you can't play a huge chunk of the features on it. You're essentially paying $100 to not use half your Switch. The other thing I ran into, the back paddle for the mappable buttons, for me personally, in my testing, came off very easily. As sensitive as the buttons are, which was good in some cases, like especially when you're playing FPS games, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But especially in FPS games, it was really nice to be able to just tap it and I don't have to worry about it. My melee, my grenade, everything was coming out on top. The problem is when I'm in the knee-deep and nitty-gritty of a combat experience, I'm slapping that thing out of panic because somebody snuck up on me and the entire peripheral just popped right off. Just flew right off. Flew across actually one time because I like jerked it up in the air and it flew across my room and I had to go get it. So, and despite everything I tried, I could not get it to stick in there. There were just some instances where that thing flies out. And when I have half my buttons mapped to it, that's kind of a big deal. All right. So that one hit personally for me. I'm not gonna lie, I was a little triggered by those triggers. The stick replacements also, I had this a similar issue. They kept coming off. That like they would snap into place and you would think that they were locked in, but for me and my testing purposes, they just kept coming off, which is why I inevitably went back to the old to the default sticks setup because they were the only ones that were actually sticking with me for another one, which is the same problem that Vaughn had in his review of the PowerA controllers, is that the thumbstick issue. The buttons, despite the fact that I like the A, B, X, and Y buttons being as big as they are, there were some occasions where my button would get stuck down and get sticky, and I would have to kind of prop it back out again. So that's another thing. Again, this controller is designed for pro, for lack of a better word, this controller is designed for pro situation. This is designed for heavy nitty-gritty FPS fighting style games, and a single button stuck that's a lost game. That makes or breaks every engagement. So if it sounds like I'm nitpicking, it's because I am. All right, it's because I am, and these nitpicks add up after a while. You have to point these things out, especially if you're dumping $100 on a Nintendo product. And of course, stick drift, that's everything. That's every controller. It's no different here. Stick drift, it happens. So at the end of the day, what are we left with? Performance-wise, fighting games, FPS games, this thing performed phenomenally. I did dabble a little bit in Fortnite. Don't give me that look. Don't give me that look. I uninstalled it right after. All right. But for Fortnite and for a couple of other FPSs I tweedled around with, it actually performed well. It felt good in my hands. I knew where every button was, like intrinsically. Even the back paddles, which I'm not used to using, I adapted to them very well when they stayed in place. That being said, virtually any other game that is not a high octane type of high adrenaline level game, this thing kind of suffers actually a lot. So I'm a big Fire Emblem nerd, I'm a big RTS nerd, a turn-based strategy nerd, a JRPG nerd. I'm a nerd. But with Fire Emblem, a weird thing kept happening where it wasn't stick drift, but it was almost like the sticks were so sensitive that I'm trying to move my cursor on the Fire Emblem map and it just kept going off into the distance, and I had to kind of like pull it back actually, to the point where I eventually stopped using it for slower paced games because it was almost like the controller itself was trying too hard. So that's a big downside for me. Performance wise, if you're getting this, you know what you're getting it for. Chances are you're either getting this because you researched it and you know what you want, or you're a dad who has no idea what to get little Timmy for Christmas and you just want the priciest item because, I'll get him the fanciest thing on the Nintendo shelves. Give me the Fusion Pro. Oh. But yeah, in terms of try, buy, or pass, I cannot in good faith recommend this thing to anybody other than the hardest of chorist Fortnite Switch players or Smash players, because virtually everything this controller does on the Switch, there are cheaper alternatives on the market that do basically everything this thing does, and you don't have to dump $100 on it. Also not legal on Smash, so right off the bat, you're like kneecapped. The case, as cool as it is, it doesn't have a handle or a strap. It's literally just, it's like a literal trophy case. Even the case, I'm like, well, for what? So at the end of the day, after experimenting with this controller for like about a month, I'm just left with asking, who is this for? Who is this for? What target audience was this designed for? And it's exactly what I said. It's designed for little kids who want to go to mommy and daddy and ask them for the most expensive thing in the GameStop Nintendo kiosk. And it's this thing, because they only ever have one of them, and it sits right there and it stays there for like 5 months. Okay, I don't know who this is for. It's definitely not for me. Unless you're a hardcore collector, I would say pass. Everything it does can be done for $40 cheaper. Everything this guy does better than this. This little boy right here, this little man with his back paddles and his nano-ness and his cool colors. This does everything that does, and I didn't have to spend $100 on it. Go for this. If you're that desperate for a pro controller because you're trying to improve your performance, go for this bad boy right here. You're gonna save so much time and so much trouble on it. But let me know in the comments if you swear by this thing, if I'm just completely out of my mind. Let me know if you agree with it. Hit us down below, and if you have another controller you'd like to see us review, also let us know. And don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, ring that bell, body slam, sacrifice, Mercury retrograde words, whatever you have to do. Just remember to keep in touch with us. We're doing a lot of stuff here, and we love to have you back with us. Until then, I'm Patrick with 4Player LAN Party. Peace.